Don't just write an email and say, I got a new contract. Can we meet for some coffee or lunch? And let me go over the contract details and maybe who we can target together. Right? So remember that they're not your sales rep. Right? They work for the GPO. They represent the hospital, and they're there for the patient. Go right after it and say, hey.
This episode explores how GPO field coordinators bridge the gap between healthcare providers and industry partners. We'll uncover the common mistakes medtech sales teams make and the insider tips on what really motivates these crucial GPO team members.
Dan, over the last few weeks, we've talked about some resources that the GPOs have. Can you remind me about what are some available resources to the members?
Sure. So you have your contracting team as always. You have marketing, but you also have field service teams. So you have clinical resource teams. You have value analysis teams. They're all designed to help the members, but also bridge that the communication from the manufacturers or hopefully an industry partner to the member and help them understand what contracts are available, where savings could be, what clinically makes sense, and also if there's new launches, right, to help support new launches and new strategies that are coming out.
Great. So can you tell me a little bit more about the field resource team? What are they like? I mean, who makes up that team, and
Sure.
then how can they help you?
So there's different layers to it. Each GPO has kind of a different name for it, right? Whether it's the regional directors or field services or like I said, clinical resource, field reps. But it's made up of each hospital is probably assigned one or two of these field service coordinators or reps. And then there's maybe a VP of field services as well that's there. And they roll up into a sales channel of the GPO. But each hospital is going to be assigned one or two, we'll call them field coordinators for now. And then, but that one person might cover, 6, 7, 10 accounts, in their area as well. So they'll be assigned multiple hospitals, and they're there to help support contract conversions. If new launches are happening, they also can help find savings, right? They're motivated by savings and contract compliance.
Yeah, good. So I want to know about what works and what doesn't work with these essentially GPO sales folks. But let's start with what doesn't work well.
Yeah. So remember that they're not your sales rep, right? They work for the GPO. They represent the hospital, and they're there for the patient. They're there for the service of the hospital. They're the best outcome. So there's three pieces of it that I think it's always important to think of: is it contract compliant? Is there savings? And then is there real growth? Like, are you just taking a widget and switching it to another widget on contract? That might not be as appealing to them, but if there's substantial patient outcome or clinical outcomes in the change, then that could be, right? Because there's other ways the hospital could save. But, if you need to be able to come with a strategic plan with them, right? Not just assuming they're going to help you. So you'll hear them say it at every conference. They say it. Don't just write an email and say, I got a new contract. Can we meet for some coffee or lunch? And let me go over the contract details and maybe who we can target together, right? There's no time in a day for thousands of contracts that they cover to be able to have that conversation. So if you're not specific, most likely you're not going to hear back from them.
Okay. And so are they receiving calls and requests from both the hospital side and the partners, the manufacturer partners?
Most of them are.
Okay.
Right? They're like that bridge between the two. So they're sitting in the committee meetings. They're sitting at the pricing team meetings and the sometimes value analysis meetings. Some of them even sit on larger boards with the GPO, so they're more in tune with what's going on nationally. But yes, I mean we're going to call them as industry partners. We're going to call them and say, "Can you help me?" But they're also going to be called into meetings and saying, "Hey, we need to find like if they're having back order issues or they're having trying to find savings or is this a viable product area that we should be looking in, right?" So they're going to rely on them as an extra hands to look at their contracting consistencies and things that they could be doing to find cost or be more contract compliant, which is more fees and revenue back to the hospital.
Yeah, good. So, You mentioned reaching out in the wrong way, which was, let's get some coffee and talk about how we can sell more of my product. What's a good way? What are some strategies that might work?
Yeah, I go right after it and say, hey, I have a contract. Here's my contract number. This is the category name. And then I've spoken to these people at the facility. I believe that our current sales is, X, and we have X market share. I believe that we can save the facility this much with our product or our service, right, or our clinical outcomes, and what you need help with, right? Have got no response from the value analysis team, or I've got no response from materials management, or whatever it may be, and can I talk to you about what a conversion plan would look like, what our cost savings could look like, and what this outcome should be. And even more importantly, if you know that they're buying an off-contract item, right, then you would put that up top too, because now you're bringing over a product to drive contract compliance. You believe you have X savings. You've already talked to X people, and you're giving them direction of things you've tried. Then they know where the pitfalls are. They know where the roadblocks could be a certain person, or the meeting maybe isn't for 3 more months, right? But they'll respond. They're more likely to respond to you if you give them that information up front, and you're giving them a little bit more of like what's going to entice them too. So remember, they're salespeople to a point also. They work for the hospital or for the GPO, but they have their own goals and quotas. So if you're giving them actionable items of things that you need help with, that you've already tried and aren't working, you identified savings, you identified where the contract compliance can be, you're much likely to get a response out of them when you're launching new contracts.
Yeah, great. So you mentioned their incentivization. You mentioned how they are incentivized. Can you be more explicit about how a field coordinator for a GPO, looks good for their bosses? How are they motivated?
Yeah, they're all different. So I would say mostly contract compliance is always going to be a big one, right? So is it an on-contract item in savings? Savings is king, right? Everybody wants to drive savings. So if they're able to drive savings with a contract compliant, that's going to be a very, very big 1-2 kind of combo of what's going to catch attention. Now, if you're able to bring that into, let's say you were established, you have multiple other contracts, so maybe you're getting attention with a new contract launch, but now you can start bringing other contracts and you can streamline and drive revenue savings for the hospital at enterprise level. Right now, you really elevate it to support them as well, because you're bringing them true value to the hospital. You're bringing true dollars in savings, and then you've got a clinical story you can tell behind it. So you kind of tied it all together for them.
Yeah, and the cost savings, that's kind of interesting to me. Is that because the GPO can then present that annual cost savings to the hospital as a way to maintain them as a customer, or is there something else going on there?
Yeah, I think that's a big part of it, right? Hey, listen, our services have provided savings to you of over year. One is also too, it's what other services does the GPO offer, right? If it's data, maybe the clinical support or administration support or cross-reference support, right? All that ties into it. But if you have a very successful, it doesn't matter the size of the hospital, right? You have success with conversion and turnover of contracts. That helps a lot with the success they're having as being a member of that GPO.
Yeah, makes sense. So anything else on these field coordinators and working with them and how you can be successful?
Yeah, I think it's important too that we talk about relationships all the time, but if you can build a good relationship with that field service sales rep or coordinator, one, they'll talk about your product. They'll help you get in front of other customers. Because maybe your territory is much bigger than theirs, so they can also lend a hand of making introductions to other their counterparts. But don't forget, every time you touch someone within the GPO, it makes its way up. So if you're a good industry partner, you're providing good service, you're a professional in every way, they're going to talk to the contract manager too, right? And that's going to bode well for you for the next contract, Or if you're trying to get a contract in another area, or support another area, right? But they'll be a cheerleader for you too. So utilize them as another extension of services that GPO offers, but as another resource for you to kind of build your brand and your company and trust within health systems.